What's up, everybody? It's Draskell here with another Yap. This time we're going to be talking about T2s. We did a short semi-tutorial video on the T1s explaining which ones you want to buy. We're going to try to be more thorough this time, and we're doing all these things live in one cut. So if I forget something or I misquote something, we'll probably add it in an edit later on in the video when it's posted on the YouTube and such. But T2s, there's a lot of them. There's a whole lot of them. There's even more T3s, but that's not for this video. For now, we're just going to try to cover the basics, the things that people are buying, why they're being bought so often, and what benefit you can get if you buy them for yourself, depending on what character you're playing. So, first things first, we're going to start off with Active Reload. Now, this one is more commonly purchased by the spray characters, so Haze, Wraith, Ivy. Anybody that has a lot of bullets that's shooting quickly, who really benefits from either stacking damage in the case of Haze, or who just wants to hit really, really fast if they're buying stuff like Tesla to make sure that their farm speed is getting up there, and they also have Bullet Lifesteal to make sure that they're sustaining through the camps and whatnot. There are characters who buy this item who aren't sprayers, like shotgun characters, for example, Shiv. There are some builds that buy Active Reload, same with Abrams. The reason that they're buying these is because these high MMR players have really good aim with their shotgun, and they're able to consistently hit their shots. And with 20 fire rate and high accuracy, if you're hitting people in the head, this is one of the highest DPS items you can actually buy in the early game, because in addition to the fire rate and the lifesteal that you're getting, if you hit the reload correctly, you're also just getting 20% weapon damage, and you're getting 20% less reload time. I know the minus reload time is a little bit of a confusing kind of metric, but really all it means is that you reload your gun faster. So, good on a whole bunch of characters, good for lane sustain, good for farming, good for just raw damage output. A lot of the builds in the game right now that use shotguns and have those spray type weapons are going to lock this in. Very, very just overall powerful item. Now, moving on, Berserker. Pretty much any tank is going to want to buy this. If you plan on frontlining at all, and you're going to shoot your gun and you have any sort of faith in your aim whatsoever, this item provides a tremendous amount of value. It's 5% weapon damage per stack, and you can have 10 stacks, and each of them lasts for 10 seconds. Now, as far as I know, and I could be wrong on this, if you guys actually know the truth and have tested it in lobby and stuff, please feel free to write it in the comments. But this item refreshes a stack, so the whole duration just stays. Now, when you see that 10 over somebody's head in-game and everyone's asking, what the hell does that 10 mean? It means they have 10 stacks of Berserker. That's what the icon above the head means. And they'll also have like this orangey kind of hue glow that lets you know that they're fully stacked up. But this thing provides insane bang for your buck. Again, it's only $12.50. You're getting the 10% weapon damage bonus. You're getting 4 additional ammo, which is not the same as percent. So again, shotgun users love this. Abrams, Mo and Krill, Shiv. Anybody who's going to be sitting on the front line, absorbing damage, you're going to get a very, very large benefit from this. There's also niche cases like Geist. She has a revolver that hits very hard. She actually has the highest bullet damage in the game. But obviously, it's a one-fire revolver, and it doesn't shoot very fast. But if you're good at clicking heads, and you're confident in that kind of stuff, and you want to, buy this item and shoot people in the head, it is going to do a lot of damage. And then, of course, you got the 8-bullet res on top. So again, very, very good item. Next is probably the most commonly purchased item, I would say, in high MMR games for anyone that has a shotgun or anyone who just has really high base bullet damage. Now, if you don't know what your bullet damage is, first off, all you have to do is hold tab. Actually, it might not work in this lobby. Oh, there we go. All right, so if you read the top right, Warden has 19.8 bullet damage right now. So if you ever want to find it, if you're hovering in the sandbox, and you hold Alt and Tab together, make sure you don't actually Alt Tab out of the game like I just did, you'll be able to see what your DPS is, your bullet damage, all the metrics that you would ever want to know. And that way you'll be able to tell what item is giving you value and how much of it you're actually getting when you buy them. So for Kinetic Dash, why is this item so good? First off, you should be doing this thing anyway. When it says Dash Jump, all it means is you're doing this. That's it. So as soon as you execute that move, where you dash forward, and then as soon as your stamina bar flashes blue, you hit space. What's going to happen is you're going to get fire rate, and you're going to get temporary ammo, which again, great for the shotgun users, especially because they don't naturally have very large clip sizes or mag sizes, whatever you want to call it. This is kind of an item that really benefits those types of characters the most, because the fire rate is also a huge damage increase. If you think about it from a math perspective, If you have very high base bullet damage, which shotgun users do because you have to consider they're shooting multiple bullets, then things like fire rate increase your DPS more than just getting any sort of flat weapon damage in the early game. Not to mention, don't have to reload because you get the extra bullets. Again, if your accuracy is good and you're confident in your movement, buying this type of thing will give you an insane DPS increase. Not to mention, it gives you health and health regeneration, which is also good for the lane. Now, I've seen higher level players, they'll buy, 2 or 3 small 500 items. We talked about the T1s in the other video. And then they'll go straight for something like a kinetic dash or an active reload because they just want to make sure that they're constantly shooting, constantly either trying to push the creeps, control the lane, or just harass. And this thing doesn't really fall off that quickly either because you have to remember you have 4 of each type of slot. So if you buy, like, let's say you bought a headshot booster and, hollow point or whatever, or close quarters, and then a kinetic dash, you've only filled 3 of your 4. And then once you have the kinetic dash, you can start saving for another big item later on, like a T3 or a Tier 4. Or even if you get flexes early and you guys are snowballing, then you don't even really have to worry about your inventory economy. But it's just another benefit of these T2 items, is that they're just so damn strong for the cost. So next we have long range. This one is kind of fallen by the wayside. Not too many people buy it anymore. Sometimes you see like a Vindicta here and there pick it up, or maybe if Grey Talons are going the left clicky type of build, which I personally don't think is very good right now, but I have seen some people do it. And then maybe like a Paradox if they're sitting in the back and they're not aggressively swapping and you just want to click people from far away. This item still does provide that sort of value. But the most recent patch that happened, I believe it was on the 29th of August, it changed Sharpshooter to no longer have the headshot bonus, which was one of the big reasons why people were picking this item up. Now, they moved it to the new item, Headhunter, but again, this isn't really a T3 video. I'm just letting you guys know that the reason why this thing is not purchased as often is because its upgrade, Sharpshooter, got nerfed. So not really a whole lot of purchasing of long range that I've been seeing right now, at least in the higher MMR lobbies. Now, melee charge. This one is more or less just for Abrams and potentially Viscous. It's a very, very niche thing that not a lot of characters can really make use of. The biggest benefit of this item is the fact that it gives you a reload every time you connect on a heavy melee. Now, there are situations where that is pretty good, but mostly I find that this is just a farming item for Abrams. When you don't want to buy active reload, you're basically choosing between the melee charge and the active reload itself. I personally have tried this a few times, and it feels okay. But honestly, if the players that you're against are decent, you shouldn't really be able to expect to punch them consecutively too many times, or if you're doing charge melees, you might just get parried on the first one, right? So the distance that you get from the charge itself, it might catch some newer players off guard, but anybody who's experienced, they're going to be ready with parries, and you're going to make yourself look a little bit silly. So in my opinion, this item is kind of just worse than active reload, because you can choose to do it at any time as well. Like, you have to consider, when you want to reload your gun with melee charge, you have to hit something with the melee charge. Whereas active reload, you can just do it for free. You can fire your weapon one time, in the case of a shotgun, hit reload, hit the active reload, and then you just have the fire rate and the bullet lifesteal when you want to go in for the next target. So if I'm thinking about that on a shotgun character, I'm probably going to take active reload over this like 99% of the time. Now, in the case of Abrams, if you're confident in your shoulder charging and just hitting them into the wall every time and getting the bonus damage of the melee, and you want to run this, by all means. It is very, very good for that character specifically. Now, Mystic Shot. This is also a very commonly purchased item, and the main reason is because it's 22% weapon damage for a 1250, which is a tremendous amount of base damage, especially for the characters who want to burst, like in cases of Pocket. I think he's maybe one of the biggest abusers of this item. You get a bonus 67 spirit damage. Now, of course, this number scales. If you want to know how much it scales, you can just hold down Alt, and it will say adjusted by, and on the bottom you can see the spirit power. Obviously, we have no items in our inventory right now, so we're not really getting any benefit. Make sure that when you buy this item, you understand that it's not the first time you hit them. If you fire your gun and miss, you'll see like a purple projectile. Like if we buy this item right now and we're to shoot, the first shot was purple, right? And now it's on cooldown, which means if you miss, you're not going to get the damage. So again, you make sure you have to hit the first shot. It's not applied when you hit them, it's applied when the bullet is fired. So don't get tricked into thinking you're just going to get that extra damage from the shot. But this one's pretty simple. It's just hit your first shot, Land your abilities, big burst, very powerful item. Awesome if you want to just delete somebody. Now, slowing bullets. This one I've actually been enjoying quite a bit more on characters like Viscous and Haze. There are some in-game guides for those characters that like buying this item early on. Now, 26% weapon damage and 5 spirit power for any character actually feels pretty good. It is obviously a component of Silencer, which is a T4, also good on characters like Haze who want to eventually use that bullet dance into the Silencer combo with Ricochet. Everyone, drools over that. You get a couple of heroes in there and they can't do anything and they die. Or in the high MMR lobbies, they just all have Metal Skin and Warp Stones and you just get sad. But still really cool for running people down. Good on characters like Warden, nice on Haze again, Viscous. Any sort of movement slow when you hit somebody is going to help not only you deal damage more effectively, but it's going to allow your team to catch up as well. There are plenty of cases in Deadlock where you're running all over the map. Sometimes fights go from one side of the map to another side of the map, and people are still alive. Like, I've seen it happen, even in the high armor lobbies where everyone has, crazy aim and they're hitting, 90% of their shots. But this thing is just nice if you want to make sure that you're either a utility character or you just really like the 26% weapon damage that you're getting from it, and you also benefit from the spirit power, which plenty of characters do. Feel free to experiment. I have really been liking this item as of late, so again, solid pickup. Now, Soul Shredder Bullets. This is another pretty decent weapon damage item, 16%, obviously not as high as some of the other ones, but also remember that whenever you're hitting them, you're applying that debuff. It's 10% Spirit Amp, 20% Spirit Lifesteal on top. Fantastic for characters like Seven, Lady Geist. Anybody who's shooting their gun and throwing abilities simultaneously is going to love picking this up. You're more or less just leaning on this in the early game for those types of characters who aren't just run-and gunners, right? So anybody on the list of stuff that you play who deals that kind of spirit damage and gun damage both together, you're going to gain huge benefit from this. Or if you're just scaling spirit in general and you've kind of run out of other items that you can buy, like let's say you're out of spirit slots, you got no purples, you got no flexes, and you're trying to find a way to boost your damage, and it's an orange slot that is the only one you have access to, this would be a fantastic choice for that. Next up, we have Swift Striker. This one, personally, I feel is pretty niche. Anytime you have fire rate, you have to consider the fact that you're going to be reloading a lot more often. Now, I know that's kind of one of those, duh, if I empty my mag faster, I'm obviously going to have to reload type of things. However, some characters are really more just about the burst and getting the bullets out as fast as possible. So what types of characters want to do that? Well, Haze, first off. Sometimes characters like Bebop as well, if you're going for the gunbot build where you're just trying to, hook, punch him up in the air, benefit from the uppercut, getting that instant wind-up time, the bonus damage, etc., etc. That's how those characters actually scale their DPS, is simply by fire rate. Now, in those cases, they typically have much larger mag size. Like Bebop in the mid-game can have upwards of 100 bullets before he runs out, right? Same thing with Haze, same thing with Wraith, although Wraith is probably a little bit less fire rate driven as she scales a little bit of spirit damage as well. But again, for those types of characters that really just want to get the bullets out as fast as possible and get those quick kills, Swift Striker is a great choice. Fleet Foot. So this one is... it's a rundown, right? It's a rundown mechanic. You're getting bonus slide distance, you activate it. You're getting the additional movement speed. And the big thing here is that when you're shooting your weapon, you don't go slow anymore. Now, you get a little bit of a movement speed slow whenever you're firing your gun in game. And then, of course, when you activate the Fleet Foot as well, you're getting the temporary 30% additional ammo. So what characters want to buy this? Honestly, a lot of them. Even characters that don't really care about shooting their weapon, like Mo and Krill, they just love the 4 movement speed that you get from this item to make sure that you can connect with things like Burrow. Other characters like Warden, when you partner it with Willpower, this ability right here, you get 20% movement speed bonus, which obviously multiplies the Fleet Foot bonus. And then you have things like, Enduring Speed as well from the T2 Vitality category that are more or less just going to make you zoom. Other candidates are like Kelvin. You pop Ice Path, you hit Fleet Foot, you're zooming across the map at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're also flying over all these buildings, and it feels really cool. And obviously you can pop it in combat as well if you want to try to make a quick getaway. So lots of applications for items like this. I personally feel as with in most MOBAs, which I would definitely classify Deadlock as a MOBA, movement speed is one of the strongest tools in your arsenal, and as many times you can, try to abuse it, you absolutely should. Now that pretty much rounds out the weapon category for the T2s. Obviously, I might have missed some things because we're kind of just, doing this raw first take kind of thing. But obviously, if you have questions, comments, go ahead and feel free to post them in the comments below. But for now, we're going to be moving on to Vitality T2s. All right, so you're playing Deadlock. It's like your first game. You feel like you're getting dumpstered, right? Don't worry, I've been there. As someone who is, let's say, a little bit older in the gaming community, I do have a lot of gaming experience, but I was not really an FPS player. So I leaned on this category tremendously at the beginning of my Deadlock career because I just found myself getting owned all the time, right? It's just natural. You start playing, you're getting shot, you're getting abilities thrown at you, grenades, Kelvin's hitting you with an ice beam, you can't move, you're throwing your hands up in the air, you're just like, I don't know what to do, man. How do I live? Well, the Vitality category is here for you. And it's here for you in so many ways. Now, we're going to start off with the simple ones, bullet armor. This one is pretty self-explanatory. You're getting a little bit of health. You get the 14% base bonus health from just the fact that it's a T2 Vitality item. You're getting 20% bullet resist on top of that, and 6% weapon damage. Now, the higher MMR players on a lot of characters will actually buy a bullet armor and even a spirit armor in the mid game if they have additional flexes open, and they kind of just want to spend their money. Because these things give just an insane amount of survivability for the cost, right? So let's say you have 1,000 HP in the mid game, pretty low base number, because you have to consider too that you're going to have T1 greens probably as well. But that means 140 health and 20% bullet res, which increases your EHP against getting shot by just so much. I know these numbers are kind of hard to just put into words how much they do for you in the game, but I'm telling you, if you're having a hard time, especially as the frontline characters, make sure that you're investing at least a little bit into your survivability so you can get your full set of combo off. If you're like a Mo and Krill or an Abrams or something like that, even just buying the small armors with your massive amount of raw health will help so much in your survivability. But make sure that you're taking stock in what the enemy team is scaling. Right? You can check very easily in-game what type of damage they're scaling by holding tab and just looking at which bars are filling up. Green is obviously Vitality, orange is for weapon, and then purple is for spirit. So identify which ones the enemy is scaling for, and then just buy the armor type that fits, the game that you're currently in. So next up, Bullet Lifesteal. Again, very simple item. The great part about Bullet Lifesteal is it's actually a lot of lifesteal for a 1250. I mean, 28% and 75 bonus health on top of the 14% base. I think a lot of people kind of underestimate how much additional health in a fight this gives you if you're hitting your shots. Or even in the case of a hero like Haze, which I know is one of the most commonly picked characters when you hit Bullet Dance, just having this item in your inventory, you're going to sustain through quite a bit of damage, especially if most of the stuff on the enemy team is just shooting you with a gun. Because remember, Bullet Dance gives you 50% bullet evasion, which means they can't even hit you half the time. So if they don't have an ability spam team, or they don't have ways of stopping your ult or things like that, or you can just sit in the back and shoot, you're going to get quite a bit of health back. So definitely something to keep in mind, especially for the the Hazes, the Wraiths, any of those guys who are just sitting there pew-pewing. All right, now on to some of my favorite items and mechanics in the game. Combat Barrier. 300 bullet shield health. Now, if you guys are new to the game and you're watching this video, you're like, what the hell is a bullet shield? Well, simple as it says, 300 bullet shield health means that the next 300 damage that you take that is just from weapons, it will hit the shield before it hits your health pool. Now, why is this a good thing? Well, if we go over the passive of bullet shield actually does while you have it, you're getting 28% weapon damage, and you're getting fire rate while you still have the shield. Now, obviously, your shield's not always going to be up. If you're taking poke or it's getting broken, you're going to have to wait for it to come back. I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the cooldown currently is 60 seconds, which sounds like a lot, but in the course of the game, you're going to find that it comes up fairly often. And you also have options like Veil Walker, which we'll talk about in another video as it's a T3 item. But there are so many situations where bullet shield health is going to give you more value than having like say, an armor, right? And not all characters actually scale the same in terms of how much health they gain per level. So if you're sitting here and you're scratching your head and you're like, yeah, okay, these green items, but how do I know which one is best for me? The general rule of thumb is this. If you're playing a squishy character, let's say like a Vindicta or a Grey Talon, and you're trying to figure out an efficient way to increase your EHP, barriers are typically going to be better bang for your buck than armors because your base health value is so low. Now, if you have a percentage of mitigation from a damage type, that's great if you have like 3,000 health. But some of these characters just simply don't have that type of HP, so what do? You pick up a barrier instead. And those characters, too, stand very far away from fights, so the chances of your barrier actually being broken at any point is substantially lower. Now, of course, it will get broken periodically, but you get the gist. Stand far away, have a barrier, you're going to get bonus damage, you're going to get fire rate, so on and so forth. Alright, debuff reducer, another great one. 30% debuff resist. Now, as it says, it just reduces the duration of all negative effects applied to you. So there are plenty of situations where you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be in like a Grey Talon trap, or maybe an Abrams is going to pin you against a wall, or you're going to get comboed by a Moe and Krill, or you're going to get lifted by a Wraith. All of these things will not last as long if you pick up this item. In my experience, it's more of a frontliner type of thing. You know, Abrams buys it, Moe and Krill buys it. Sometimes, you know, Wardens or Shivs buy it. If there's, say, an Infernus on the other team as well, and you don't want to die to, like, Afterburn or Toxic Bullets, it also reduces the duration on that stuff as well. In addition, you're getting the 75 bonus health, and you're getting the 6% weapon damage. This item also builds into Debuff Remover, which, in my opinion, is one of the best items for the mid-late game that you can ever buy, as it removes things like Silence Glyph, or really any sort of negative effect like Affliction. I know a lot of people didn't know this, but if you hate Pocket and you hate getting Affliction casted on you, Debuff Remover will simply get rid of it. It will just be gone. And it doesn't just get rid of one thing, it gets rid of all of them. Anything that can be removed will be removed. Next up, we have Enchanter's Barrier. We already spoke about how the barriers work, but this one is Spirit Shield health instead of bullets. So any sort of ability mechanic that's going to be hitting you, whether it be grenades or a Kelvin Beam or Geist throwing those red knives at you, any of that stuff will be blocked by this. And while you have the barrier, you're getting 20 additional spirit power and you're getting cooldown reduction. I'm telling you, barrier items on a lot of characters, extremely, extremely good. One of the things that I actually like to do in a lot of games, depending on what character I'm playing, of course, is look at my lane matchup and just think, if I'm playing a farming type character like a Seven or a Haze or even a Wraith, if I'm getting spammed out, and I'm not just getting shot, but I'm actually getting grenade type abilities thrown at me, I will heavily consider buying this item, even as like a third or a fourth purchase, just so I have more EHP for the lane, and I can take more aggressive trades, right? Or even if you get Dove or something like that, having a barrier can help tremendously in making sure that that dive either gets punished, or, you know, maybe you're just able to get away. Alright. This is the one item. If there's one item in the entire game, as a MOBA player, that you should recognize as, like, probably just buy this all the time, it's Enduring Speed. Important distinction to make here, I think I said this in the other video that I made, but when you are looking at Sprint Boots, which is the T1, it's very important to make the distinction between sprint speed, which is your out-of-combat speed, and then 1.4 move speed. That means it's always active. Even if you're getting hit, even if you're getting, you know, slowed, whatever, it still works. In addition to having the 40% move slow resist. So if you're a Kelvin hater, or you just find yourself not able to get out of sticky situations as much as you would like, this item is going to be your best friend. Now, a lot of the higher MMR players are staying on Sprint Boots for pretty much ever. Like, I've seen even some people completely forgo Sprint Boots. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's still very early on. The game isn't even technically released yet. We only have 20-something heroes in the game. But as someone who's played MOBAs for pretty much half their freaking life, I don't know if I can play a game without this item. Because just the ability to get in and out, to get to lanes faster, get to fights faster, potentially get away from situations that you would ordinarily just die in because you just move too slow. I can't live without this item, personally. Now, this is a me thing. In the future, people are going to figure out the best way to play the game. They're going to optimize. They're going to be like, yeah, this is worth it, or yeah, this is not worth it. But in my own experience, I feel just a million times better having this item in my inventory on all types of characters. Of course, you're also getting the bonus health. You're getting the regen on top of that as well, along with the increase of base health that you're going to get over just having the sprint boots. But yeah, enduring speed, one of my favorites. Now, Heal Bane. As the name would indicate, you're looking at an item that is a heal reducer. So it means if a guy heals for 100, but they were applied with Heal Bane, instead of healing for 100, they're only going to heal for 60. Any character that has self-heal, whether it be a Kelvin or a Geist leeching health back, anything like that is going to be affected by Heal Bane. Now, it's important to remember that this item only works if you are dealing spirit damage. This will not apply if you're just shooting your gun at someone. It says specifically in the passive that it has to be spirit, so make sure you have that. In addition, you're going to get the 75 bonus health, and if someone is affected by Heal Bane and they die because of the 6-second duration that is applied when the Heal Bane is on them, you will heal for 350. This is probably the cheapest and easiest to apply anti-heal in the game. There are other options, of course, like Decay, but Decay was nerfed in the previous patch. I think it was the previous patch. Maybe it was the one before, but I think it was the one on the 29th that nerfed it. So, if you don't have any purples free, or you have an extra green, or even a flex open, and there's somebody on the enemy team like an Infernus, or a Kelvin, or a Shiv, or whatever, and they're just like healing way too much, and you hate them, as many people do, you can pick up a Heal Bane as long as you apply a spirit damage. They will be much, much easier to kill. Alright, now, one of the sleeper OP items, actually probably not even sleeper OP, probably just literally OP, the Healing Booster. This item is the cheapest and only form of healing reduction resistance, excuse me. Now, what does that mean? It means that if someone did happen to pick up a Heal Bane on the enemy team for 1250 and they're hitting you with the minus 40 healing reduction, and you have this item in your inventory, they will only afflict 25%. As far as I know, all the healing reduction resistance is additive against whatever sort of anti-heal is being applied. So this will circumvent some of that. It will allow you to stay alive a little bit longer with those types of spells. You obviously get the Spirit Resist on top of that, and you get a little bit of bonus health regen. Now, who the heck buys this? Honestly, a lot of characters. Some builds, Innate's Yamato build buys this item. Abrams build buys this item. Many Abrams builds buy this item. Mo and Krill buys this item. Kelvin buys this item. Even freaking Ivies buy this item. The important thing to remember here is that any sort of healing that you have, whether it be regen or an insta-heal or even an item, all of that stuff is affected by this because it all counts as healing. So anything that's percentage-based also works. It's part of the reason why this item is so common, is because there's tons of ways in the game to heal through whether it be abilities or items, and it affects all of them fully. So you're going to be seeing a lot of this. All right, next up, Reactive Barrier. Another probably just insanely OP item that will likely be nerfed, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But 15% ammo, 75% bonus health, 2 health regen. Seems kind of, you know, not so great, right? But passive, automatically deploy temporary bullet and spirit shields when you are movement locked, stunned, chained, immobilized, or slept. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Does it work against Bebop Hook? And I'm here to tell you that it does. So if you hate Bebop, and you just for whatever reason are a hook magnet, and you simply cannot dodge them for the life of you, and he's always playing the left side of the lane, and you're playing on the right side of the lane, which against Bebop is very dangerous, because the way the third-person view works, you won't be able to see him. This item is here to save your life. For a 1250, anytime those things are applied, you get 400 bullet shield health and 200 spirit shield health for 9 seconds. In the beginning of the game, this is probably the easiest and most applicable item to keep yourself alive against those types of characters in the game, hands down. Now, it also works against things like Great Talon Trap. Obviously, if you get daggered by Haze and they're trying to open up on you, it'll work against that too. It's important to remember that this item, for the cost, $12.50, you just won't die. Like, they'll think they'll be able to kill you, and they'll try to CC you to death, or they'll hook you, or whatever. You'll just live, right? You'll just be that much more tanky. Now, obviously, it does fall off the later the game goes because people are going to be scaling damage and stuff, but let's say you buy the first 1250 at, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes in. You could easily have that much money by then, right? If they tried to make a play on a character like that with that much extra HP, it will probably fail. That's all you gotta know. Alright, next up, Spirit Armor. Again, self-explanatory. 20 Spirit Res, 5 Spirit Power, 14% base health. We discussed a little bit about how the EHP works, when you should buy these types of items and when you should not versus the barriers, so we're not going to talk too much about this one. It's just, if there's a lot of spirit damage on the other team, and you're really feeling like you need to frontline more, but you simply just can't, then you would want to consider picking this up. Alright, Spirit Lifesteal, same as Bullet Lifesteal. There are some characters who buy this as a bread and butter. Seven, for example, buys it all the time. Yamato can buy it in her build if you're going for the spirit sort of bursty power slash stuff. Lots of characters in the game really benefit from this. I think that a lot of the time people lean on lifesteal a little bit too much. But in the early game, and for just keeping yourself high health and making sure that you have some sort of sustain, if you're not going to buy anything like a fortitude or any sort of stuff like that, this item is basically here to make your farming experience more comfortable for those types of characters who use spirit damage to hit creeps. Also, obviously, really good in fights. If they don't buy anti-heal, then this will obviously help a lot in the case of, like, you know, hitting 7 ulti or anything like that. You will heal a tremendous amount, especially in the lower brackets. All right, now, next. Another crazy OP item that will probably be nerfed again. Divine Barrier. So, 14% health, obviously, from the base, 8% ability range, 75 bonus health, and then 1 MS sprint speed, important distinction. Anything that says sprint speed is strictly out of combat. Now, the on use. Provide the target with bullet shield and spirit shield, and movement speed. Can be self-cast. I've been picking this item up a lot on Viscous, and it's just a deployable shield that also lets you run away faster. Now, the cooldown is pretty long. Like, if we compare this to Reactive Barrier, this is 28. This one is roughly the same, but the thing is, you don't have to think about this, right? Reactive Barrier just goes off, as long as you get hit by an ability that qualifies under the passive effect. So, why do we buy this, then, if Reactive Barrier exists? Well, obviously, we're leaning more into the Spirit Shield, but the movement speed for 5 seconds, and the ability to cast it on other people it's phenomenal. Like, I buy it on Viscous almost every game now, and you essentially can absorb damage. You can pseudo-save with this on top if you have your cube as well. You cube them first, you Divine Barrier after, or you Divine Barrier to let them walk away, you cube someone else. There's really just an insane amount of applications for this. And above everything else, as far as EHP goes, nothing in the game comes close to the double barrier items. Like, think about how much raw survivability you're getting. If you look at a thing like Bullet Armor, in the case of 1,000 health, you're getting 200 EHP against bullet damage, right? If we had 0 bullet resist going to 20, that's 200 EHP. And since both these items give the 14% base health, we're kind of just not going to compare those because, you know, it's the same. But this is more bullet shield EHP, and on top, it also gives spirit shield. So if you're wondering why all the high MMR players are buying this item, and they're buying things like Reactive Barrier, it's because just for the cost, these things are ridiculously efficient. Now, if you're playing solo queue and stuff, and you're not really sure about your teammates, then you can feel free to skip the Divine Barrier, and, you know, in lieu of other things, if you want to be more farmy and stuff like that. But in my opinion, this item is, like, almost too good to not buy. I feel like every team should have at least one of these things, maybe even 2, given the right circumstances. So, next up, Health Nova. Another great item. This one is being purchased a little bit less. People are starting to really lean into the barrier gameplay, which makes sense. But this one is still incredibly potent. You get the 10% weapon damage, you get bonus health, you get 260 health regeneration over 2 seconds for everyone in an AoE. Now, it has no target limit. And if you get more than 1 person, you also get additional healing based on how many people you hit. So if you hit 5 people, right, including yourself, you get 100% bonus. That means that you're getting 520 healing instead of 260, right? Now, this isn't including things like heal booster or whatever. Obviously, that will make the heal even more potent. Again, great for lanes where you're getting heavily spammed. and you want to play with somebody else, like in a dual lane, right? Like an Ivy. You can tether, you can pop this Health Nova, you'll get an insane amount of healing, it'll feel really good. And yeah, just this item just rocks. It's just really, really strong. Next up, Restorative Locket. This one has kind of fallen by the wayside. It is still pretty decent. It's 8% Spirit Res, 5 Spirit Power. The problem with this item is that the other 1250 Vitalities kind of just eclipse what this can actually give you. Now, in the past, this item gave you full stamina back on use, and when it was like that, everybody was buying it. You would just use all your stamina, be low HP, pop Restorative Locket, and then you would have all of your stamina back in addition to a huge burst of health. Now, for people who played Dota 2, which I know a lot of you didn't, it's essentially just Wand, right? Now, it stores up a charge every time someone uses an ability. Now, abilities are basically just anything that isn't shooting your gun. And then once you have 15 of them, I mean, you can pop it at any time, but ideally you want to save for the 15 stacks and then hit the button. You can heal an ally, you can use it on yourself, and you'll get 1 stamina point back, and then healing based on however many charges that you have, up to 15. Again, this item is just not being purchased as much because Divine Barrier exists. Like, the way that I see it is that this is a conditional, right? You have to be in a fight for so long to get 15 stacks in the early game that if you're comparing this item to Divine Barrier, which is 300, and movement speed, and you don't really have to think about, you know, how many stacks you have or anything like that. This is just press it. You press it on the guy at the right time, you're feeling good. Now, when you have this item, you will be able to check to see how many charges it has. You can hit it right here. You can see on the bottom it just says 0. So you'll be able to keep track very easily just by looking at the little icon down here. I'm sure these will be updated, by the way. I seriously doubt this is the final version of what it's going to look like. But yeah, if you do want to buy this item, feel free to try it out. I personally feel like either Reactive Barrier or Divine Barrier or heck, even Health Nova kind of just outshine it currently. But we'll see in the future if Valve decide to buff this item at all, because I think it might need a little bit of love. Alright, finally, Return Fire, the last of the T2 Vitality items. 125 bonus health, 7 Spirit Power, and 7 Fire Rate. And then the active is automatically fire a bullet towards any attacker who damages you with their abilities or weapon. Now, this says percentage of bullet damage returned and spirit damage returned, which means it works on both damage types, obviously far less effective on spirit than weapon. Frontliner characters will buy this item periodically. It's especially good against Haze, for example. It works against Bullet Dance. Every time you get hit, you know, you're going to be reflecting that damage back. And I'm pretty certain it's their damage, so it's very similar to the Blade Mail item from Dota 2. Again, I know a lot of you guys didn't play that game, but it's more or less the same mechanic. You're just sending damage back to the person based on their damage, not your own. I don't think there's really any purpose on characters outside of frontliners picking this up. You know, Kelvin, if you're building especially tanky, Abrams, Mo and Krill, theoretically. But a lot of people kind of skip over this item. It's just not... You can kill people in other ways where you don't need Return Fire to do it, and there's also much more efficient stat-wise green slots that you could be filling up with. So I think that the item has potential in niche situations, but generally speaking, you're probably not going to want to pick it up. All right, now, moving on, finally, to the Spirit list. T2 Spirit items. Last category, still arguably one of the strongest categories. I mean, really, there's not a whole lot of bad items in this game, and I think that's a good thing, right? You don't want to save up for an item, buy it, and then feel bad because it doesn't do what you want it to do. But so far, we've gone over some crazy stuff in terms of value for items here on the T2s. So, first up, Bullet Resist Shredder. 100 bonus health, 5 bullet resist, and reduces bullet resist on enemies when you deal spirit damage. So make sure that you can actually apply this before you buy it. There's plenty of characters out there who have to think about actually hitting a button, like in the case of Haze, or if you don't get enough Fixate stacks, I believe it's every 20 you get the bonus 60 spirit damage. You have to hit them with spirit to get this effect. So don't make the mistake of thinking you can just shoot them with your gun and do nothing else and they'll be minus bullet res, because it does not work that way. But just a damage increase, very straightforward item. Obviously, you're getting the 8 bonus spirit power as well from it being a T2 in the spirit category. generally speaking, really strong for anybody who just wants to click and you want to deal additional damage. Next up, a duration extender. So this one actually bears talking about because I want to show you guys something really quick. This is more for the really new players who might not understand how this type of stuff works. So we're going to pick up an Unstoppable. If you don't know what this does, it's just an item that makes you immune to crowd control effects. Being interrupted, stuns, sleeps, roots, all that stuff. It's kind of the please stop crowd controlling me item, and it's very, very effective at that. So if we buy this duration extender, you can see on the right-hand side, the second box, that icon at the very bottom. The duration extender will actually make your unstoppable duration longer. It doesn't just work on abilities, it also works on items. It works on everything. In Dadlock, it's kind of just the it does all the stuff method. So any sort of ability duration, stuff like that, it's going to apply to all of your stuff. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. Other than that 16% ability duration, you're getting 100 bonus health, you're getting some extra health regen. Now, stuff that you might not think about when you're buying this item, it also applies to negative effects as well. So if you are Abrams and you shoulder charge someone into a wall, they will be stunned for longer. Your charge will charge for longer, which means you will have a better chance of pinning someone from a longer distance, so on and so forth. The applications of duration extender are very, very wide in this game. And again, I really like the itemization system because it opens up a lot of possibilities for, trying new stuff out, new builds, all that kind of stuff. But again, make sure that you have abilities that actually benefit from this or an item that benefits from this before you pick it up. Next up, same application with improved cooldown. 16% cooldown reduction, 1.5 health regeneration. This lowers item cooldowns. Unstoppable will go from 60 to 50 seconds. That means more uses, more time spent being un-CCable, all that good stuff works on all of it. If you ever have a question on if it works or not, all you have to do is load up the sandbox, hover the item on the right-hand side, you will see all the interactions that it has. Valve has done a very, very good job at making this accessible and easy to understand as long as you take the time to read. Reading is good. You should do it. All right, next up, Mystic Vulnerability. This one is super, super straightforward, just 6% spirit res. And anytime the target takes spirit damage, they have reduced resist. Now this builds later on into escalating exposure. Also a crazy endgame item. But anytime you have that type of character who wants to just throw shit at people, or you're a Yamato, or you're doing some Beam Kelvin, whatever, and you want a little bit of extra bang for your buck, especially in the early game, this one is very, very efficient for damage. So if you're looking for an early, spirit damage item, let's say you already picked up a Mystic Burst or like an extra charge type deal, and you're looking for your next item, Mystic Vulnerability is very high on the list of efficient spirit damage items. All right, Quicksilver Reload. This one also being purchased quite often in high-level games. Imbue an ability with bonus spirit damage on the first hit. When the ability is used, your weapon is reloaded and has a fire rate bonus. So this is basically Quicksilver Reload, but for characters who have spirit abilities and don't necessarily want to hit the reload button, right? You can buy this on Wraith, you can buy this on Haze, you can put it on your daggers, so every time you dagger someone, you get a full mag. The applications are pretty straightforward. Again, plenty of characters can make use of this. It's mostly just the characters who have abilities to refresh it with. Right? I mean, that can basically be anybody if you want it to be, but mostly we're talking about any character with a larger mag size really likes this item as well. All right, next up, Suppressor. This item actually just got nerfed, but in my opinion, it's still crazy powerful, right? 50 bonus health, 2.5 health regeneration, and 4 spirit power. Now, when you deal spirit damage to enemies, you also apply a fire rate slow. This is probably one of the most undervalued stats in the game. Whenever you slow fire rate, you're basically slowing the enemy's attack speed. So if you're trying to anti-carry, if you want to be a nuisance to like the Hazes or the Wraiths or even the Infernus who actually needs to hit multiple times to apply Afterburn, having this item in your inventory just as a 1250, not only are the stats insane, because you're actually getting 12 spirit power from picking this up, if you hit somebody with, a grenade or a beam or even a freaking, Haze Dagger. Not that you would buy this on Haze, but just as an example. The 25 fire rate slow earlier on feels so oppressive because there aren't a lot of fire rate items that aren't like kinetic dash or active reload, right? So they are just getting their DPS cut by a tremendous amount just by having any sort of spirit damage applied to them at all. And this also, I believe, works through effects such as, Tesla bullets is spirit damage as well. And I'm pretty sure this still works in regards to that damage type on top of that. So if you want to be super annoying to the left click characters, make sure you're picking this up. All right, one of my favorites. One of my absolute freaking favorite items. I actually am thinking about only playing characters that buy Cold Front from now on. We're just like force slotting this item into the build because I love Cold Front that much. And that's even post-nerf. So, 10% Spirit Res. An active, release an expanding Ice Blast that deals spirit damage and slows targets it hits. Now, it's a 14-meter range, which isn't, it's not the biggest, but if you're playing characters that really like to go in, you will definitely land this every single time. My personal favorites, Pocket, Yamato, sometimes Abrams. If you're the frontline guy or you have a really good way of going in and getting that little bit of extra burst damage and slowing them down, 40% slow for 3 seconds is a lot, especially if people are not buying things like Enduring Speed. They will not be moving very fast if you put this on them. So yeah, if you ever want that little bit of extra burst as a frontline character or anything like that, Cold Front, super good choice. Also, just for clarity's sake, this is an AoE around you. This isn't a cone. This is like an expanding circle. It goes 360 all around your character. So you can hit front, side, back, all sides. All right, next up, Decay. Also nerfed recently. This item is the 1250 equivalent of Healbane, but it also does a little bit of extra stuff. We'll talk about it here. 7 spirit power, so 15 total. Now, when you apply this active, it's only to one person. It reduces healing received of targeted enemy and inflicts damage over time of their current HP. Decay's damage is non-lethal. So, if someone is at full HP, it's going to be dealing more damage than if they're at half, and 50%, they'll take more damage than if they're at 20% because it's a current health value. Now, the benefit of Decay is that it can be applied from a pretty good distance away. 22 meters is pretty long. For an anti-heal. Some characters can apply Healbane, some characters can apply Toxic Bullets from further, but for an early game solution, or even a mid-game solution to anti-heal, if you don't have any other slots, like your greens are full, or you don't want to buy Toxic Bullets, Decay is the option that you're probably going to be looking at. Those pesky Infernus players, the Kelvin sitting inside their domes, the Moe and Krill hitting Scorn and going from 20% HP to full, if you freaking hate those guys, you can buy this item and put it on them. It'll last for 10 seconds, minus 50% healing. So do not underestimate this item. Even with it being nerfed, it is very, very potent. All right, Slowing Hex. This one is kind of another case of an item. Okay, so Slowing Hex got nerfed, then it got buffed, I believe. No, wait, it was 2 nerfs and then a buff. So they nerfed the projectile speed and they rebuffed the projectile speed because people were simply outrunning it. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but you could theoretically outrun Slowing Hex long enough to where once the debuff itself was applied, you would actually be out of harm's way a lot of the time. Think, Wraith ult getting lifted, stuff like that. All right, so 1 sprint speed, 5 spirit power, so 13 total, and then deals spirit damage and slows target movement and dashes. Also silences their movement-based items and abilities. Does not affect target stamina usage. So, what does that mean? It means that if you catch a Grey Talon, or a Vindicta, or an Infernus before they've used their movement skills, which Rain of Arrows and Flight are movement skills, they will not be able to activate them. Now, if they're already in the air, or the Infernus has already used Flame Dash, it will not stop those things from already happening. Now, in the past, Slowing Hex used to actually do that. It would make them fly out of the sky like a freaking rock. They would just hit the ground, thunk, and then you would kill them. Now, it kind of made those characters really shitty because you could just take them out of the air whenever you wanted and they couldn't run away from it because the float speed is slow. So they obviously nerfed that part of it. But nowadays, you kind of need to hit this before they're able to see you or react if you want the biggest value, right? Now, in the case of heroes like Pocket, you can put it on them and they won't be able to flying cloak away, which is obviously really strong too. So if you like killing those characters and you don't quite have enough money for a silence glyph, then you can think about picking this up. Candidates are like Warden, obviously. He's probably the character who buys this every single game, for the sole fact that you just put it on someone and then you go ahead and you cast your cage and If the person doesn't understand movement tech, like if they're bad at dash jumping or they don't have enough stamina, they're pretty much guaranteed to get rooted, and then you just shoot them in the head. So it's pretty cool. Nice little follow up there. Same with like Mo and Krill. You can put that on them while you're burrowed, and then when you come out, they're obviously slow. They can't walk away from the burrow damage. You can maybe land your combo after the fact. Some nice applications, but still a little bit of a nerfed item. Definitely situational. But if you don't like floaters and you don't like characters with movement abilities, definitely think about this. All right, finally, last of the T2 spirits, Withering Whip. 8% fire rate, 4 spirit power, 50 bonus health. Target an enemy to apply a fire rate slow and reduce their bullet resist. Now, I also think this item is borderline broken as far as what it actually gives. When you put this debuff on somebody, it's 30 fire rate slow and minus 14 bullet resist. So it means they essentially can't shoot you back that well. And in addition, they're taking more bullet damage from you. Now, the person I see buy this the most right now is Haze. It seems to be a very common purchase for the sole fact that this is a spirit item, and if you didn't know, right now Haze gets more mag size the more spirit you have. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so for every 2 spirit power, you get 1 extra bullet in your mag. So I see some Hazes picking this up. They'll cast it on you, and then they'll use like their bullet dance. Maybe they have like slowing bullets on top, or they dagger you and catch up and try to shoot you to death. But this is the most common application. I think there are a lot more characters who could probably slot this in, because it's just a really solid item overall. And if you partner this with Suppressor, minus 25%, 30% on top, that's 55. I'm actually not sure if it stacks that way. Some of the math geniuses who have played this game longer than me will probably know the answer to that. But comboing these items together to be sort of an anti-carry, I feel has some really strong potential, maybe a little bit unexplored, but that's just my current take. I'm not like literally the highest MMR. I'm like a little bit below that, but that kind of wraps it up for the T2s. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, you can go ahead and post it in the comments below. If you want to check me out on Twitch, I'm live basically every single freaking day, twitch.tv/Draskell, same as the YouTube name. So hope you guys learned a little bit. Hope to see you soon, maybe on the stream as well. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys soon.